What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. Don't forget, you can check us out on the YouTube channel. You guys have been absolutely amazing with the subscriptions, the engagement, really humbling, and we appreciate it. And we try to put out some great content on this Tuesday. We're brought to you by our good friends over Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road. And the reason we put on great content is because of our great guest, who now I can officially say host of Lloyd Vance Inside of Football. I like the way that sounds, right? On 1029 The Game, and of course, Broad Street South Network with our guy, Angel Martinez down in Florida, our good friend Lloyd Vance. What's going on, brother?
Doing great. It's exciting season, man. We got a lot of surprises out here in the National Football League. Teams you thought were going to be good, they're falling to the wayside, and you got some contenders coming out of nowhere. I mean, just think about it. Baker Mayfield, of all people, has a 2-0 team.
Well, I caught a little bit of the show last night. I thought you guys did a great job. And, you were talking about, which we always do talk about, is the injuries, overcoming them, inconsistent play with some of these young quarterbacks, which we kind of highlighted a couple of days ago. And then really the parity in the league. We'll work our way backwards, and we'll start with Monday Night Football. And let's get into the Steelers and the Browns game to start. I don't know what's up. I mean, listen, we like the Steelers outright. I thought even with a low home dog, I was fine with them taking them. And of course, the Saints, I'll get into in a moment, screw me with a bet, but that's okay. But the Steelers offensive issues last night, pardon me, Lloyd, but I want to get into the Chubb injury and how that is going to affect Cleveland going forward.
Yeah, Q, that was very unfortunate. And they're at the goal line, and I think Minka Fitzpatrick was just trying to make a play there. And I don't think he was intentionally trying to hurt him. It's a brotherhood. And when you see the replay of that knee just contorting, it was just like, oh man,
Yeah, it was bad.
it reminded me so much of I don't know if you remember Robert Edwards playing flag football on the beach
New
at the
England
Pro Bowl.
Patriots.
Yes, similar type of thing. His leg bent the wrong way, and unfortunately, it was. I'm hearing multiple ligaments torn, and you hope for the best for Chubb. He was having a very good night, 64 yards rushing, and you could see he's the engine of that team, and it was a hard loss for them. But they had Ford pick it up, 16 rushes for 106 yards, and that young man was running hard. And
Yep.
I'm hearing that they had Kareem Hunt in today for a visit, so maybe they'll go back to him.
The irony, right? Listen, I mean, you've got to have Deshaun Watson stinks. Yeah, I'm trying to give you guys like great football analysis, right? The X's and O's, but he is not the same quarterback he once was. And you start to now wonder, is this serious buyer's remorse? Because for those who don't know, the owner of the Browns, and we talked about it, jackass decision. Let me freaking give this guy a totally wholehearted, covered head to toe, fully guaranteed contract. Every single solitary little cent, peso, everything, shekel, however you want to call it. This guy's do everything. And I don't know if it's just rust. I don't know if he's disinterested. And then how many times in your life have you ever seen a quarterback get flagged twice for personal fouls? I mean, he's throwing the ball poorly. He got bailed out by Cooper. The decision making's not there. I can't buy into Cleveland because of the Deshaun Watson. And now you lose arguably one of the best backs in the NFL.
And Jimmy Haslam's the owner there, and he's definitely have to have buyer's remorse. He got into that bidding war for Deshaun Watson. We heard that the Dolphins are involved, the Saints, and I bet those two teams are just so happy they don't have Deshaun Watson, because I do agree with you, Q. After almost 2 years out of the league and all his legal fight and everything, he's just not the same guy that he was in 2020 when he led the league in passing yardage, and he was a dynamic young player. He could make plays inside and outside the pocket. Just so tentative now, and he's not seeing the field. I mean, his numbers prove it out. Last night, 22 of 40, 235 yards, one touchdown, one interception. And we all know that fumble scoop score by TJ Watt just turned that game around. And, Watson, Yeah, those plays on the sidelines where he's grabbing a face mask and throwing a guy, that's just boneheaded stuff. And,
Yeah,
and
but what do you do with him? I
they
mean,
need more.
that's you're married to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, they sure are. And I bet Stefanski, the head coach, is like, oh man, what did we do here? I know they wanted a quarterback. Everybody talks about that litany of quarterbacks that they had over the years, draft picks, Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Spurgeon, Wynn, all these guys that played for them and just couldn't get it done at quarterback position. But they hitched their wagon to the wrong horse. This guy he's rusty, as you said, and he just does not look right. And they're stuck with him.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, Pittsburgh, Pickett did not play particularly well. So there might be a little quarterback problem for Pittsburgh. And you look around that AFC North, again, we know it's going to be a tough division. And then you got, I am not going to write these young quarterbacks off. First of all, thanks for screwing me last night, New Orleans, right? Because to prevent defense, you're sitting there with 3. If I could have grabbed it at 2.5, I was fine. I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, this game's in hand, right? And all of a sudden, back on my play, trying to put a couple dollars in my hard working pocket, and then I get the friggin' prevent defense and ultimately the push. What the hell you doing, New Orleans? But nonetheless, they got the win. And their quarterback, Derek Carr, my buddies were texting me saying he's cooked. He didn't play particularly well, but the Saints got the win.
Yeah, and Derek Carr, he's starting to adjust to the weapons that they have. And let's not forget the Saints receiving core, now that they're healthy, these guys and they have some guys that can really get the ball downfield, particularly Rashid Shaheed. He had that big 45-yard catch, and he's one of the fastest guys in the league. 4 catches, 63 yards. I really like Chris Olave, coming out of Ohio State, big time player, and that catch was incredible. 6 catches, 86 yards, and you just see he is their guy. He's going to be a dynamic player for a number of years for them. And let's not forget to tip our cap as well to Michael Thomas. 7 catches, 55 yards. He's starting to come around after about 2-3 years of ankle injuries and looking like he was done there, fighting with Sean Payton. They look very happy there, and they're going to be a fun team to watch. Now, Atlanta's also 2-0 in the NFC South, but right now, New Orleans is feeling good.
Yeah, nice segue to the Falcons, because we were talking about some of these young quarterbacks starting the season on the road and 2 straight weeks. Green Bay did it against Chicago. That's why I think people steered a little clear of them against Atlanta. They get to win 25-24. How about the teams that needed to win, right? The Giants needed a win. Cincinnati needed a win. Buffalo needed a win. We'll start with the Bills, because now, again, we're starting to kind of write the quarterback off a little bit. Here we go. And what do? You put up 38 points and you wax the Raiders 38-10. That's a big win for Buffalo, because Allen basically allowed that offense to bounce back, and they routed the Raiders after really a dud to open up the season against the Jets.
And the story this week was there was 10 games that were within one possession. This was not one of them. And this was an opportunity for the Bills to right the ship. And everybody, was picking on Josh Allen. He looked terrible on national TV, losing to the Jets and throwing all those interceptions. But you're right. He was efficient. He was 31-37, 74 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he was not playing hero ball. He was just
Right.
picking them apart. He only threw about 4.9 yards per attempt, but he was getting the ball out of his hands, and he got Diggs involved, 7 receptions, 66 yards. And you really have to like that he got Gabe Davis back in the lineup, doing some good things for him. 6 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown. So when those guys are going, and then they have Cook, who helped equalize it, he had 17 rushes, 123 yards. So they had that nice mix that you want to see in terms of run pass, and the Bills look very good. So we'll see if they picked it up and cleaned everything up. But everybody's on the Miami bandwagon in that division right now.
Yeah, and real quick, just on the Raiders offense, Garoppolo struggled. They only ran the ball for 55 yards. So they've got to figure out a way to get him a little more acclimated and not be that Jimmy G that is turnover prone. Buffalo, New England, I'm not a fan of Mac Jones. We said this in the summer. I think the hoodie is just sitting there saying, let's get through the season. I can go golf. I can do whatever. If I want to go find another girlfriend, I think he split with his, current one. Sorry to hear that, Belly. But hey, you'll be okay, Belichick. You got a couple of rings here to keep you company. New England's not good. And I just don't know why people were actually buying or subscribing in a theory that they can contend for the AFCs. I think Tua is going to turn out to be a prolific passer over the course of his career. And when I say that, people they're like, what are you talking about? I'm not talking 3,800. I'm talking 4,500. He might have 5,000 yard seasons, 25 plus touchdowns. I just think he's perfect for that offense because he gets rid of the ball so fast. I mean, they kept highlighting it the other night, just bang, bang. They kept killing with those slant plays. As long as he's healthy, he's going to put up some monster numbers for the Dolphins.
Yeah, Ken, you talk about Belichick, and I also agree with you that his time has passed. He really wants to stay on and catch John Schuler and get that NFL uh, highest victory total
Yeah.
out there, but it's just not looking good for them. But when you talk about Tua, I do have to tip my cap and kind of apologize to him because I've always been like, Tua. I thought maybe it was just a byproduct of Alabama and all those great receivers around him. He is very precise. He reminds me of like a left-handed Drew Brees in terms of his accuracy. He's 21 to 30 for 70%, 249 yards, touchdown. He did have one interception, but he's getting the ball out quickly, as you said, and he's getting in his playmaker's hands. So I know Waddle he's banged up with that concussion, but they have Tyreek Hill, who had 5 catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown. And he's just moving the ball out quickly enough and keeping all his weapons happy. So if they have Mostert going the way he was as well Sunday night, Miami's going to be a dangerous team. And let's not forget to also include Miami's defense. They pressured Mac Jones over and over again 20 times, and they sacked him 4 times. I really like that young outside pass rusher, Phillips, and the rest of the group there on that defensive line. So, right now, Miami, you have to put them in your top 5 if you're ranking the teams.
What's your level of concern for Cincinnati and Burrow, especially if he's banged up and they just look, Lamar Jackson, we know we highlighted it when we did our Football Friday edition of BYP. Lamar Jackson's had some big games against Cincinnati throughout the course of his career, put up some really nice numbers, didn't turn the ball over, didn't get sacked, by the way. I think he had close to 300 total yards of offense. They win it by 3, but my question is really with Cincinnati, I mean, and Burrow re-aggravating that calf injury.
Yeah, Kim, and he got hurt like the first day of training camp, and it's just been lingering. And they put him in bubble wrap, and Zach Taylor said he was going to be okay, and he can go back out there. But this team does not look right, and I know everybody expect them to make that jump after coming so close, and it just shows you how fragile the National Football League is in terms of expectations. And that calf injury may keep him out this week. We're still waiting to hear from all the doctors and everything, but he's 27 to 41, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And the key thing to me, Q, is Jamar Chase is not the same guy he was last year in terms of they're not getting the ball to him. He has 10 receptions for 70 yards and no touchdowns in 2 games. So this offense is not as dynamic as it was. I don't know if it's that offensive line that's always been kind of in flux. They got Brown coming over from KC, and he's having some problems on offensive line, and his center gets blown up, and there's a lot of pressure on Burrow. So last year they started 0-2, and they were able to bounce back, but I'm just not sure if they're going to be able to do that and have a playoff run in them this year.
All right, let's get to my Giants. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. So I was actually broadcasting. So I was remote broadcasting. I was calling fights on a Sunday, mind you, and my phone's blowing up. I told my buddy, leave me the frig alone, man. All of a sudden, he's like, what the hell's going on? 20-0. I'm like, okay, 28-7, make the adjustments. I went back. Now, you know me, I watched the game in its entirety yesterday. And I don't know what the hell happened during halftime. I don't know if Dable or Kafka, who was calling plays, I don't care. They came out like they were shot out of a cannon. They made the adjustments. But, look, they looked extremely sluggish for 2 weeks now, going back to the playoff loss in the divisional round to the Philadelphia Eagles. But I must say, Daniel Jones in that second half played like Danny Nichols, right? He played he looked like an MVP caliber and elite quarterback, and they open it up. And I thought the big play to Hyatt right away, boom, get Arizona on their heels. Saquon will get into him in a moment. But that was, I think, as much as I want to say that was one of the great wins I've ever seen, it was almost a relief win because if they were to go to 0-2, they could have got blown out. If that's a Coach Shermer or Joe Judge or friggin' McAdoo with his Denny size friggin' menu, they're losing that game 35 to friggin' nothing. And they're going to be a laughing stock. Their season's done, but they figured out a way, the gut check, the character, the balls, the heart. That's what you want, little juice. And they came back, they stunned Arizona, and you almost feel bad for Arizona because they were playing hard. I necessarily don't, but the Giants saved their season, and you got to credit Daniel Jones, the offense, and we'll get into Saquon. But how about the Giants? I mean, they were left for friggin' dead.
I'm watching this game and I hear you in my ear. This is the freaking Cardinals here. Come on, and you got Dobbs playing pretty well quarterback. They're up 20-0 at the half, and that just shows you Gannon, who I just never liked as the Eagles defensive coordinator. What a great job he's now doing for the Cardinals that he couldn't hold that 20-0 halftime lead, and but you also have to look at the other side of it. And I do agree with you that Daniel Jones, he woke up, man. He not saying they saved their season or anything like that, but this is the defining win. And it's a game you have to have. And
100%.
it's an over my dead body type of situation. And it was, he's 26 of 37, 321 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have an interception. But what showed me was he was running the football with some authority. 9 rushes for 59 yards. And, we were going to talk about Saquon in a minute, but Saquon going out, he does not have his, leading rusher out there. He's got guys like Matt Breida, and he's like, you know what, I got to take this on my own and get the job done. And that's what the Giants did. I still think Williams and the rest of that defense, they still have a lot of life still left in them. And the NFC East is looking like one of the league's best divisions. All the teams, 3 of them are 2-0, and then you have the Giants at 1-1. So, a lot of people may complain, but there are no style points in NFL, and they got the W.
Yeah, listen, a win is a win. It doesn't matter how you get it done. I'm concerned though with the run defense. They got gashed. I'm concerned with Thibodeau. He's been MIA. They just don't have a pass rush. And when you're starting rookie corners out there on an island, you have to have a pass rush to help and bail them out and mask the fact that they're going to get beat. They're going to get burned on a couple plays. That concerns me. Look, Saquon, I got killed for saying I thought he was done. And then he came back and had a monster year. He's just injury prone. And I went back, and part of me was like, I think the injury, and I'm going to get hammered for this, could have been avoided if the Giants didn't go conservative late and they continue to throw the football. You're not handing it off. I mean, they had Arizona on the ropes. I would have kept throwing it. They chose to run it. It's a fluke play. Oh, by the way, it was an injury that wasn't on turf. It was on grass. There's no way this kid is playing Thursday. And even if he's available to play, I'm sorry, that type of injury can linger. I mean, I was listening to ESPN and they gave out some of these numbers where every time he's come back, it's almost as though he's rushed back because he's rushed for 35, 40, 41, 50 yards. You've just rested up, and then you get 11 days before you have Seattle on Monday Night Football. But this is why you don't pay running backs. Like I hate saying it because it's kind of a dick thing to say, to be honest, but the Giants are probably sitting back. Well, this is why we did what we did. And they're not doing it with any type of malicious intent because the organization loves Saquon. But from a business standpoint, Lloyd, you can appreciate this. It's like, this is why we don't give in, because these guys break down.
Yeah, and it's a business first and foremost, these owners. And the Maras, they looked at that. They look at when they're sitting at the table negotiating with Barkley and his agents. They're talking about games missed and injuries and soft tissue type problems that he's had in the past. And now with this high ankle sprain, that's a tough one to get over, as you were saying. Sometimes you got to wear that walking boot for a while, and then a lot of players try to rush it, get back out there. and it could be a blood flow type situation. You know, you feel bad for him, but you do understand from the owner's standpoint that there are other positions that they can put their money into when you see injuries to these top guys, and somebody else has got to step in. And it's unfortunate for Chubb and Barkley and these guys that the running back position has been devalued, but it is what it is, and they just got to keep playing hard. But it's such a demanding position, and these guys on defense, they're just teeing off on them. These running backs do not have the protection that the quarterbacks do, and it's a demanding position, and we'll see if Saquon's able to come back. But they have a tough job on Thursday night, as you said. They're playing the Niners, who could right now, Q, to me, they're looking like one of the best teams in the National Football League.
Yeah, they are. And it's a good thing I teased that game too, because I mean, friggin' McVay kicking the field goal. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, what am I even, should I start ripping up some of these tickets? I teased them down with Dallas. So I was fine with that. By the way, right now, that line is at 10. Whether Saquon's playing or not, that line's going to sit at 9.5, 10, just for the gambling public out there. Lloyd Vance jumping on a Tuesday edition of BYP. We take a look around the NFL queue here. All right, let's get to a couple other games and teams. Colts get a win. 49ers just mentioned over the Rams, 30-23. How about the Jets? They get waxed by the Dallas Cowboys, and I think it is time. The Duke believes it is time where the Jets pick up the phone and they call Ginger Jesus. You know who Ginger Jesus is?
Ginger, what? Andy Dalton?
No. Andy Dalton is the water pistol.
Okay.
He's
it's
not
a redhead. You talking about
Ginger
Matt Ryan?
Jesus is Carson Wentz. Let's go.
Oh, no. Oh, he's
you
terrible.
Need it. You have to have it.
Done.
Zach Wilson stinks. He sucks. You have to have an alternative.
No, I get it, but not him. Not him. He's hard. And everybody in Washington will tell you, they need to call somebody. Whether it's they're talking about Colt McCoy's out there, Cam, Matt Ryan. They're just throwing all these names out there. But I do totally agree with you, Zach Wilson, and a little later on I'll go over my Lackey of the week, but wink, wink, we know who it's going to be, because Zach Wilson is not a good quarterback at this point.
So you're making the case for me. Do you want the season to keep slipping away? And this crap that this Jet defense is like the 85 Bears or the 78 Steelers or the 2000 Ravens. They got manhandled the other day by Dak and the boys. So listen, if you're the Jets, Aaron Rodgers can listen to Dolphins having sex and think that's going to heal his tendon. I don't even what does that even sound like, by the way? Like, is that an echoing? Like, like, what is that? Like, what are you going to do? Is that part of the rehab? So he's not coming back.
I heard they're trying to get him back to the playoffs.
No, that dog ain't going to hunt. You need a quarterback now. You need a quarterback now.
He was awful. Zach Wilson, 12 of 27, 107 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. And, when I watched him, he's just eyeballing his receivers and he's just trying to get to Wilson every single time, whether he's double covered, triple covered, and he's just making bad decisions. And it's just like, wow, this was a very bad first-round pick.
3 picks in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So, he just lost him the game.
But really, it's not even that. You have to think now, here's the problem. The Jets believe they still have a very good defense, and that might be the case going forward, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea of going after Aaron Rodgers was why? You need a serviceable quarterback, a manager of the game. Give me something on offense. I mean, go back to the New England game last year. They had no offense, and they lost on a punt return late. If you look at their schedule, they've got New England, Kansas City, Denver, Philadelphia. If you go 2-2, now you're what? You're 3-3. Then you've got the Giants, the Chargers, the Raiders. Let's just say you go 2-1. You're what are you 5-3? I would say. Buffalo, you're not beating. Miami, you're not beating. Maybe Atlanta, Houston, you'll beat. Miami again. Washington, I don't know. Cleveland, I don't know. New England. If their goal is we get to 9 and we get in, does Carson Wentz Or if everything goes south for Minnesota, pick up the phone and say, look, I'll give you I mean, Kirk Cousins, you giving up a second round pick, third round pick for Kirk Cousins at this
If
point?
if Minnesota continues their losing ways, they may want to
Okay. But they
step
need
away from
someone
Kirk
now, is
Cousins.
my point, Lloyd. They need a quarterback now. They
Yeah,
cannot.
they do. And the thing is, my only thing is with Wentz, he is a turnover machine at this stage in his career. They need somebody that's going to protect the football, lean on their rushing game, which I was surprised. You know, he Wilson was also their leading rusher. You know, they got to get Brees Hall going. I know Cook had a fumble in the game, but they have to get Hall and Cook going, run the ball behind that offensive line. That's a bunch of maulers. They're not good at pass blocking.
Yep.
You know, and then lean on that defense who can keep them in some games with some timely turnovers. But I do totally agree with you that Wilson is not the answer.
So
They
who
got to
is?
find somebody. Joe Douglas's job is on the line. Him and Salah, you know, because they've hitched their wagon to Wilson. Let's not forget they drafted him.
Yeah, but they also turned around and the organization hitched their wagon Aaron
Yeah,
Rodgers.
exactly. They already told you how they feel about Wilson before the season even started.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't,
You
you
had
know,
players
everybody.
wearing Mike White shirt, Mike effing freaking White shirts
Yeah,
last year. I mean, you've got,
maybe bring him back.
yeah, listen, they're a debacle. Yeah. Well, he's living it up in Miami, backing up Tua right now.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
You've got Sauce Gardner who decides I'm going to deactivate X. Then you got Brees Hall with four Dukes in a tweet because they only got 4 carries. I mean, come on, man. What are we doing here? Right.
Yeah, you got a lot of fighting going. You know, it's all about the me, and a lot of it has to do with they were probably primping for the cameras all along. You know, during Hard Knocks, and they started believing their press clippings, and you know, Rodgers goes out, they get the miraculous victory over the Bills, and they think, okay, but Dallas gave them, you know, some good truth serum there, and this team without the quarterback that's not going to be turning football over there in a lot of trouble.
Seattle gets the win, even though Gino pulled a rabbit out of the hat. I think that's a come back down to earth loss for the Lions. You mentioned the Bucks, right? I mean, we talked about it. Okay, here you go. What do we make of Tampa Bay? Is this a nice, cute little story right now with Tampa Bay? I mean, I'll say this. I've always liked Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to sit here and
Yeah.
say he's a very good quarterback or even a good quarterback. I liked him in college. I like the moxie of him. You know, he had the big win on the road, right? Remember when they waxed Pittsburgh in that
Yeah,
playoff game?
sure.
You know, off the sofa last year, won a game on Monday Night Football, I think it was. And now, hey, Baker Mayfield, right? I mean, you look at his numbers and what hasn't he done yet this year?
Yeah, and you're talking about a Tampa team that's desperate. Nobody believes in them, and Todd Bowles is on the hot seat, and everybody expects them to take a step back, given that Tom Brady's gone, and Gino Baker has put his head down. To his credit, going to work, 26 to 34, 317 yards, 1 touchdown. He had no interceptions, which is
Bingo.
always kind of his Achilles heel.
Yep.
And you know, I'll let you know. Be honest, I was never a Baker guy. When he picked him first overall, I was like, what's going on here? You know,
Yeah.
but uh, he's getting his opportunity, and this team, you know, the NFC South is wide open. You know, you have Atlanta there, and you have New Orleans, both 2-0, but Tampa Bay can compete with all these guys because they still have some players on defense, and then you have Mike Evans, who's got a big chip on his shoulder. I mean, he's playing for a contract. He's in his contract year. 6 catches on 8 targets, 171 yards, and a touchdown. So, you know, it was a good quality win for them. But when you look at the other side of it, the Bears may be one of the worst teams in football, and they're another one. You know, Ryan Poles is their new general manager. He's probably going to be looking for a new head coach because Eberflus is not getting it done, and Justin Fields, he's not seeing the field either. He's just, you know, throwing interceptions, and he's just not playing
What?
efficiently. So
Okay. So
big mess there.
real quick on Chicago. I don't want to spend too much time on them. Then I don't understand why people thought they were going to challenge and win the North. When we did our previews, I thought this team was a 4-5 win team. Secondly,
Yeah, they spent a lot of money in free agency, and I don't know what they spent it on because they're not getting anything out of it.
the quarterback's been sacked 101 times in 2
Yeah,
seasons and 2 games.
Yeah,
That's
their
that's
lines ain't
David
never been fixed.
Carr-ish, right?
Yeah,
That's
their
David
lines never
Carr-ish.
been fixed, and
Yeah.
Fields. It's just a matter for they all kind of turn on each other, and it's just going to get uglier there in Chicago. But like you said, you know, they're probably team 29, 31, 32 in the league.
Richardson, Stroud, and Young. Out of those three, because we like to overanalyze and Monday, Tuesday morning quarterbacking. Who looks to be early on? I know it's a small sample size where you can say, okay, you can build around this guy, but the other two are just lagging behind.
Well, it's funny because we thought that Anthony Richardson was the most raw coming out of Florida, and he had the big arm, but he was a little inconsistent. But he's looked the best out of those three young
Yeah,
quarterbacks. And
agree.
I watched a lot of Bryce Young last night for Carolina. He's another one that's kind of forcing things and not seeing the field that well. I think he will get better as that roster gets better around him. CJ Stroud, obviously, Texans are a very bad team, and he's just trying to hold together. He's putting up some good numbers, though, but I'd have to say it's Anthony Richardson. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, and he's just a dynamic player that get the win. The only thing you got to worry about with him is uses his legs a little too much and he takes some hits. So he's in concussion protocol right now. We'll see if he's able to play. Minshew had to come in and finish that one out, but Richardson looks like he's a good, dynamic young player.
All right, and then lastly, got to get into my guy Russell Wilson throwing out the friggin' prayer. I mean, anytime Sean Payton loses, I'm enjoying it. And what did I say before the season? What was my bold prediction with Russell Wilson?
He will be benched before, I don't know, game 5 or something.
No,
You were
I didn't say.
yelling.
I think I said right around game 9. They've
Oh,
got
okay.
their issues. I I look at Sean Payton, and Sean Payton has made his career with pocket passers. Drew Brees, pretty much, right? Pocket passer. Russell Wilson's not that guy anymore. Russell Wilson wants to take off and run. Russell Wilson doesn't want to get hit. Russell Wilson doesn't trust his line. Russell Wilson doesn't want to see over the lineman. He wants to just take off and run. And do his credit, that last crazy play. I mean, Washington, can you do me a favor and knock it down? But still, it's not a good marriage, man. It's just not. And I just don't believe Russell Wilson is the same quarterback he once was.
Yeah, too, he's approaching, I think he's 34, 35 years old, and he just does not look the same. And he looked that way kind of his last season in Denver, and then last year was just fiasco. He did have some okay numbers, 18 to 32, 308 yards, 3 TDs, 1 interception. And you talk about that Hail Mary, he got it done. He also did run a lot for 56 yards. But, this Denver team is one that they're just built incorrectly. It just they have a lot to change on this roster. And then conversely, you look at Washington, their defense is going to carry this team to some wins, and they've caused 4 turnovers in 2 games, and Payne and Allen are just dominating in the middle of their defensive line. And then, Howell is better than a lot of people thought he would be. 299 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. So Washington is in the mix in the NFC East, and you're right. I think the Broncos are going to struggle, and they'll fight out with the Chargers for the basement of the AFC West.
And we failed to mention Eric Bieniemy, right? Because we talked a little bit about that offense, and here's Eric Bieniemy's chance to get out of Andy Reid's shadow. And now with Rivera, let me take over this quarterback. And what are we looking at in Sam Howell? And I pulled up his numbers, right? So 2 games, 18 to 31, 202, picking a touch. Got sacked 6 times. Offensive line is still a little shaky. He's been sacked 10 times in 2 games, but then threw for close to 300 yards and no turnovers in a win. So they put up 20 and they put up 35, so 55 points. So you're averaging about 25 plus in 2 games. So that Eric Bieniemy effect. And, if you think about these 2-0 teams, the Saints, Tampa, Washington, I mean, who's your early season surprise 2 weeks in?
Yeah, I always break down at this time of year the contenders and the pretenders, and when I look at the 2-0 teams, I'd have to say Atlanta, Washington, and Tampa Bay are the most surprised to be 2-0. They, but you have to tip their cap to a lot of them. They made changes this off season, and they wanted to have a different year than the year before. They did that losing leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and I think these teams may have some of them turned the corner, particularly Atlanta. Desmond Ritter's doing a very nice job, another young quarterback, not turning the football over, leaning on his weapons. He finally got Drake London involved this week, and I think Atlanta is a team that in NFC South is going to be interesting to watch.
All right. Lackey and game ball.
Yeah, well, I kind of teased earlier my two picks this week. Let me get up to it. Game ball, you got to go to TJ Watt. He was just dominant last night for the Steelers. The Steelers, as you said, Kenny Pickett at the quarterback position was kind of struggling, but they had two defensive touchdowns, one by Highsmith on a pick six early in the game. But in the fourth quarter, TJ Watt had that 16-yard scoop score, which kind of closed that game out. He had 4 tackles, 1 sack, where he became the franchise's all-time leading rusher, all-time sacker. And then he also had 1 tackle for loss. So TJ Watt is our game ball winner. And our Lackey, I gave it away. It's Zach Wilson, the quarterback from the New York Jets. Maybe they should be making some calls right now. As I said, Colt McCoy, you want Wentz, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, whoever it is, they got to do something.
Let me stop you real quick. You're saying Matt Ryan in the friggin' booth, Cam Newton, who's doing what? Colt McCoy, at least Carson Wentz.
Oh, Vance.
Okay,
I'm not a Wentz
I'm
guy.
trying to think who else. Nick Foles?
Wow. He's no good away from the Eagles. I've crunched those numbers a million times. I always roll that out. He had the magic Angels in the
Oh,
outfield
is
when he
it
was on the
27 and
Eagles.
2, right?
Yeah, yeah. All the other teams he played for, whether it was
Horrible.
the
No,
Rams, all these other ones, he
it's
was
still a
terrible
green
for.
uniform.
Yeah. Hey, if I'm the Jets and Joe Douglas and Robert Salah, I'm trying anything. And Woody Johnson, quite frankly, their owner should be putting the pressure on them because, the way Wilson is playing, they have no chance. 3 interceptions in that game, and he's just eyeballing his receivers. And then when he does kind of throw it, he's tentative and he just doesn't look good.
No.
Double, triple coverage, and he gets my Lackey for the week, and maybe they'll make that change to the trade deadline's around the end of October, and that's gonna be fun to see if they say enough's enough and they put him on the bench again.
Yeah. I just love how we're throwing out these quarterbacks' names and we're trying to keep a straight face. I mean, that's where we're. I mean, I saw someone tweak Colin Kaepernick, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah, he hasn't played in how many years? I mean,
I
and
feel like 30 years.
yeah, and the league they've told him, look, we're not going bringing you back, and
They need to really just push. I don't know if I think Kirk Cousins might have a no trade clause. I don't know, but if he's going to walk at the end of the year, right? Minnesota's not resigning Kirk Cousins. They're not, and
no,
he actually played relatively well in that Thursday night in the
yeah,
loss to Philadelphia. They got to do something, man, because I'm not going to sit here and say Aaron Rodgers is not coming back next year. I find it very hard. I cannot wrap my head around this realistically, saying as much as he's a believer in self-healing and whatever he's rubbing on his Achilles, whatever God he's praying to, and hey man, whatever works for you, hey, I'm all for it. I don't judge. But that's got to be very strong juju lotion you're putting on that Achilles, man, because I find it very hard to believe that he's going to come back this year. And God forbid, I mean, but you just crunch the numbers. It just does not make sense. And quite frankly, if he comes back next year, that's a story for next season. Right now, the Jets believe they can at least compete and get to the playoffs. And if that's the goal, it is amazing. Like, I want to dissect this real quick for you from a psychological standpoint, right? Imagine 6, 7, 8 months. We're courting, because that's what they were doing. they were courting. And then finally they get the girl of their dreams, right? And all of a sudden, the day they're supposed to get married, they're sitting there like a jerk off at the altar by themselves, waiting around. Like that's like that's who the Jets are. They're looking at when she walk in. Where's the music? You hear the
Yeah, so lot standing up front, and Woody
standing
Johnson's got
there.
nobody to walk
And
down
it's
the aisle.
really bad and it's awkward. And then, God forbid, you got to have your drunk uncle or your old man or one of your friends come up to you and basically say, listen, and by the way, full disclosure, that's never happened to me. I'm just saying that, she ain't showing up, man. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
she ain't
Dustin
coming
Hoffman,
back.
the graduate, the
Yeah,
bride's running out.
yeah, exactly. Jump on the bus and let's get the hell out of here. Psychologically, how do you recover from that as a franchise? Like you're standing up there trying to rally the troops and saying, we're going to believe in this guy. It's not, it's stop.
Yeah, you feel bad for the Jets fans, and they always try to rally around that backup quarterback, but we always know when a backup comes in and that guy, you got no chance with him. And I think back, I covered the Eagles team very similar. I remember Mike McMahon had to come in, and they were like, Mike McMahon, the coach is trying to sell you. He can get it done for us. I think it was Andy Reid. And you're just laughing. You're like, they got no shot with
No,
this guy. And it's a shame. And it is what it is, though. But they got to figure out a way. It's still early in the season. If they can
yeah,
win some games ugly, they can stay in the race.
yeah, fair enough. Tuesday edition of BYP. Our guy, Lloyd Vance, catch him every Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Of course, Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Broad Street South Pod, and of course the network and part of 102.9 The Game, and every Tuesday and Friday for our football recap and our Football Fridays edition of BYP. All right, my friend, you got a couple of days to kind of look through some of these lines. We'll do it on a Friday. We'll see what kind of games speak to us. I'm still a little salty last night because, again, I don't need a friggin' push. I need a win. I don't need this other crap. I got tickets here. I got notes here. The Duke's getting a little restless. We got to start backing our plane, putting some shekels in the pocket. No.
I'll tell you this. Go with the over. 13 and 16 games were the over this week. A lot of scoring.
Yeah, it's funny too because when I tagged you on the post on Facebook, and I was like, I was loving Jacksonville, Kansas City over, and of course, what was it, 13-6?
Yeah, that was the only one. You figure your Mahomes, Lawrence are going to light it up, and they don't do anything.
All right, would you say 13 of what? 13-6?
13 of the 16 games in week 2 were all
Wow,
overs.
wow. All
Yeah,
right,
it's crazy.
well, maybe we'll illustrate that a little more later on in the week. So, all right, brother, always appreciate you jumping on BYP for a couple moments. We'll talk later on in the week.
All right, Q, thanks for having me on.